Hello, welcome to our weekly movie talk. This time with our biggest undertaking so far, talking about John Carpenter movies. And therefore, Sean, my co-host, and I have rewatched most of the filmography of John Carpenter within 1 week, which was, a very nice experience, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, man, I loved it. Like every time I watch the movie, I post about it on Instagram and some clips.
Yeah, for me was on some days I watched 3 movies and then I took a nap because it's still enjoyable. But of course, when you sit down and take notes, it's very much work.
Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty much you're doing watching the movie, researching it, and all that stuff, getting all your info ready.
We already have some people in the chat. Hey, Magic Lasso, one of the show's regulars, as well as Captain Comics. Howdy, Il Capitano. Yeah, not so many Adrian Barbeau tatas like in Swamp Thing, but still a lot of Adrian Barbeau because, Carpenter always liked to cast his chicks for his movies.
Yep.
Yeah, Carpenter, very long career. He is still there. Nowadays, he's doing actually more work in comics than in movies. There's like a whole line of John Carpenter presents horror comics. And of course, in the back, he also wrote one of the Joker comics, I think last year, for the Year of the Villain.
Yeah.
But at the moment, he's working more in comics than in movies.
I find it interesting that for a guy who had a long career, he only has 18 movies to his credit.
And most of them he put out like one after another, and then he take a long break because I think after Ghost of Mars he said he was totally burned out from movies, and then he only returned 2010 for the award. Oh, we also have Gary B, the casual comic guy, in the chat. Hello, Gary. He wrote me yesterday that he thought it was Friday, so he waited for us to go live. Well, today you got the right time and the right day.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say we just like go through all these movies, talk a little bit about it. Maybe in the end we talk about our top 5 Carpenter movies.
No problem with me.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 18 movies, and I know you mentioned it before, but we're not going to really touch on the television movies. I might touch a little bit on Body Bags because that's the only one I actually watch. But other than that, we're going to leave the television movies, the Elvis and Somebody's Watching Me. We're just going to focus on his mainstream movies.
Exactly, yeah. And he did some couples of short films. Some of them are very Godzilla-based. But he really, like, his first feature film was Dark Star in 1974 with Dan O'Bannon, the screenwriter of Alien and Total Recall.
Mm-hmm.
I watched Dark Star, I think, 2 days ago. And it's very interesting because his first movie was a science fiction comedy. It's a slow burner, and I think it's a movie that you really will appreciate when you're totally in the mood for it. But it's not like a casual movie. It's very well written with a very intelligent humor, and the ending is crazy and it very much reminds me a little bit of Silver Surfer. The ending. I think you said you haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I was contemplating on watching it, but between that and a bunch of other movies that I really want to watch, I was like, I'll put that on the back burner.
It was here on a streaming service, sadly only with German dubbing. The dubbing was a little bit weird, but you can totally see like where his talent from creating good effects with a low budget comes from.
Yeah.
We have Cookie in the chat. Welcome.
What's up, Cookie?
And then 2 years later, he did his movie. It's hard to say his breakthrough movie because I think he really got big with Halloween later. But Assault on Precinct 13 most certainly put him on the map.
I feel like that movie. I've seen clips of Dark Star, but that movie captures Carpenter at his earliest. You know, like he really settled in on his style, and the soundtrack, the score is amazing on that movie. I just loved that theme song that plays throughout the whole movie. You know, like every time it pop up, you know, shit's about to go down, and the acting was really good. You know, I really enjoyed a lot of the actors. The guy who played Napoleon Wilson, amazing. You know, this is one of those movies that I've probably seen a few times, and it doesn't get a lot of play on TV. But the scenes that I remember was the shootout when they was coming through the windows, and when Wells was killed when he got in the car and the guy popped up in the back and shot him. But man, that movie was so good. You know, I don't even think of the remake they did years later. You know, I've seen that once and I didn't even bother watching it again. But this one, I was like, man, this is those type of movies that still holds up for a 70s movie.
This is almost a perfect movie, and I think for a 70s movie, it had a very fast. It was very fast paced, and this is actually one of my big criticisms with some Carpenter movies is the pacing. But in this film, he gets the action, the pacing totally right. And I think one of the reasons that it doesn't air so much on TV is because this movie has no chill. I mean, how they executed the little girl, like right in the beginning, it's like
the music that plays it when it actually is frightening. You know, when you actually listen to the score of it.
Yeah, it's like this is also a movie where you share no empathy for the bad guys. You really want them like to go out.
And the funny thing is, like, watching it now and seeing what's going on, you know, here in the States with the police brutality and stuff like that, it actually has some sort of relevancy because they focus on a lot of the gangs and their interracial makeup. You know, you had whites, you had Latins, you had blacks, you know, you had a different makeup of gang members all forming together to wage war with the police. I mean, the whole beginning of the movie starts off with them stealing police weapons. They didn't show it, but it was something that was mentioned that they stole a huge shipment of police weapons and they won it back. And you saw the execution of the gang members who was going through that dark hallway, and the cops set them up saying, freeze, drop your weapons. And then as soon as they make movements, the cops just blew them away. You know, so right off the bat, the gangs was like cutting their arms to, you know, to solidify their unity by saying, this is for my fallen soldiers, dropping the blood. And they just went on the spree. They looking to kill anybody that they feel necessary just to get the police attention. Unfortunately, my biggest gripe with this scene when the little girl died is that the father decided to become a vigilante and chase them down when he should have known better. Like, first of all, you left your daughter sitting on the pavement right there. You're going to take the gun from the ice cream man's truck, and then you're going to go on a chase spree, kill the leader, and then you get overwhelmed by the gang and you run to the police station and he can't even speak for the rest of the movie.
Yeah. And
I'm like, you put yourself in this situation. You, instead of getting in your car and getting the hell out of there, you're going to go to the phone booth. And I'm like, come on, common sense say, get in your car, get the hell out of there, probably go back to the scene of the crime where your daughter was at and stuff like that. But nah, he set himself up, man, and that's what led to assault on Precinct 13 was him. He was the catalyst for everything.
Hello, Perry.
Yo.
I have to agree with you, but I also really much like this scene because I think it also plays in one of the first switches like the John Carpenter did within his movie, because it basically, he teases two possible protagonists in the movie. Like, first of all, the cop that delivers Napoleon, and then the father. Like, the cops gets like then shot immediately, and the father is like not talking for the rest of the movie. And so he gave like Austin Stoker, fantastic actor, really the role as protagonist. And it was back in the 70s, not that often that an African-American got the role of the protagonist. So I think he teased it very well with possible protagonists and then let Stoker become the protagonist within the movie.
and he played that character amazing. Like I love every time everybody approaches him, somebody new, he like, you got to smoke, and it's like that throughout the whole movie. Every time somebody new come up, you got to smoke, and then there's the whole mystery behind him because, you know, he says off a little backstory of how somebody tells him that, you know, your death just waiting to happen. You know, death surrounds you, and then he kills, you know, 6 men, something like that. And, you know, we don't really get no true backstory on it, but, you know, we just know that, hey, he's on death row. He's on his way, you know, to get the electric chair. And the whole question behind him is how you get the name Napoleon. You know, like the guy who was taking him to the next prison asked him, even what's his name asked him, the lead protagonist. He asked him, where you got the name Napoleon?
Who played the lead protagonist, and they had a wonderful chemistry. I think,
Bishop is his name.
I think Darwin Johnston, what was his name, who played Napoleon, and the protagonist, the cop, was played by Austin Stoker. Yeah,
Stoker played Bishop, and Johnston played Wilson, Napoleon Wilson.
Yeah, they had such a great chemistry and really good camaraderie going in the end. And it's a very brutal movie, and I think it aged so well, and in my opinion, one of his best works.
Another character, there was 2 other characters that I enjoyed, and that was Lay, played by Laurie Zimmer. She played like stone cold straight woman.
That stick kick was wow.
Not only that, she took a shot to the arm and no-sold it. Like it was like nothing to her. Like she said, she been on the police force for 5 years. I'm like, well, she must got some experience with guns and training, because for her to get shot like that and not crumble, not cave into it, it's like, that's hardcore.
Her stoicism reminded me a little bit like Meg Foster in They Live.
Yeah. Just without the whole knocking somebody out of a building.
Who keep saying this?
But I liked her, and I liked Tony Burton, who played Wells. You know, of course, we know him from the Rocky movies and all, but I thought he was really good in this, you know, as the convict who just wanted to get the hell out of the situation. And, you know, he lost to Napoleon Wilson, which he knew he was going to lose because, you know, he's like, man, the black guy loses, and I got to go get shot.
Yeah, I love how this movie played with tropes. And it really, like, it shows a lot of the elements that Carpenter uses in his later movies. Like, he never copies the movie. Some argue that Ghosts of Mars is basically a science fiction remake of this movie, but he uses a lot of the elements used in this movie across his future projects.
This movie actually takes elements from Rio Bravo, the John Wayne movie. That, when I looked it up, I did remember watching Rio Bravo years ago, and it had the same premise, them being trapped in this building by surrounding outlaws. So he definitely took inspiration from that movie and put it into this 70s setting. And it's like almost like a Western in terms of just the setting.
Makes sense, because Carpenter is a big Western fan, and also Big Trouble in Little China was supposed to be a Western in the beginning, and was brought to current times only later on.
The one thing I really like about Carpenter is that he doesn't mind changing up his movies and adding different elements to them.
Yeah.
Like Big Trouble in Little China has the Asian fantastical mystic powers in it and stuff, martial arts and stuff like that. So he was willing to do that. You have your horrors, you have your science fiction. That was a little bit of comedy involved. So he mixes it up, with his stuff. He doesn't just focus on one genre. He has multiple avenues of genre that he does with his movies.
He stays mostly between horror and science fiction, but he totally uses everything. These genres are also very, very broad and very flexible, and he sure makes the most use out of it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so on Precinct 13 was like his first like true Carpenter-esque movie.
Yeah.
You know,
I would say like it's an action thriller, and within that genre, I would even say it's one of these movies that hang in between like old school crime dramas of the 70s and before like action movies really got going, of course, in the 80s with Commando.
Like, the funny thing about it is it's made in the 70s, but it doesn't feel like a 70s movie.
Yes.
Like most movies you watch in the 70s, you could just see it. It's a 70s movie. Whereas this movie it looked like it could have been shot in the 80s.
Yeah, it was ahead of its time for sure.
Yeah.
And after this, he had his biggest mainstream success with a franchise that is still going on today. I have no idea why, but apparently a lot of people love Halloween.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed Halloween. You know, it's the one thing about Halloween is it was the first major slasher film in America that got completely outdone by other slasher films in the 80s. You know, you had the rise of Jason, you had the rise of Freddy Krueger. You know, so by the mid 80s, Michael Myers felt like in third place behind those two. So for him to be the original boogeyman, the man who was just the personification of evil and just stalking people, to be put in third place when he was the one that really started the genre in America, it does feel a bit like why people tend to look at the movie and say, it's a good movie, but I prefer Jason or I prefer Freddy because they're more engaging as characters, especially Freddy. You know, Freddy is a bit more comical and stuff, but he's more engaging. Yeah, whereas Michael Myers is just dead serious.
For me, it's European. It's a very tame version, like a very tame homage to the Italian giallo. When you watch Mario Bava's A Bay of Blood or Sergio Martino's Torso, I think those movies are way better. And these are the movies I watched here in Europe first, and watching Halloween later. And I also have to say that Halloween, you know, it has such a big name and it is so overly praised, so I expected a lot of it. And it didn't really perform for me. It was very tame and slow, and I never got into the characters of the movie. The Italian movies for me were always so much more vibrant in terms of colors, and even though John Carpenter's soundtrack is perfect, when you listen to the soundtracks of the Italians, those are going even more like into your bones and into your bloodstream. I expected a lot from Halloween and it never performed. I watched it, I think, the first time when I was around 14, and then rewatched it, I think, 10 years later because I wanted to give it a second chance. But every time when I'm watching it, I'm getting more and more disappointed.
I understand how you feel because, like I said, you watch those Italian slasher movies, and those, I'm not going to disagree that, you know, Halloween is tame to pit it up, because I've seen some of them on YouTube and stuff like that, and they are brutal. You know, they are truly brutal slasher films. And when you watch Halloween, it's like, man, this shit is weak as hell. It's weak sauce. You know, it's like there's no real blood and gory stuff in the first Halloween. They didn't really go with that until the second movie, where it became a little bit more bloodier. But you know, the first one, I just like the whole stalking aspect. You know, I like Michael Myers just being this background character, just stalking Laurie and her victims, and coming out of nowhere. Like, what makes him different from Jason is that he hides in the shadows, and then by the time you realize it, you're dead. You know, because he hides in the back of your vehicle. He'll hide in the room, and his mask will pop up, and it's like, oh shit, he's right there, and he's just silhouetted by the darkness. And with that dark suit he got on, it just makes him perfect for these dark atmospheric scenes. You know, and there's one part in the movie that I kind of like, what the fuck was he doing? You know, like when Laurie falls over the steps and lands on the floor, he stood up top there just looking, and I'm like, bro, Michael, why you ain't just going down the stairs and shanking her to death, man? I mean, it was plenty of time, you know, but yet he took forever on the top of the stairs, and I'm like, that kind of irritated me every time I watched the movie. But I just liked the whole thing of the classification of evil. He is the boogeyman. You know, he haunts you, he stalks you, and then he kills you. You know, and I thought Donald Pleasant, which this was the first movie him and Carpenter worked on, was fantastic in it. You know, I enjoyed Donald Pleasant's movies, and I thought he really carried the movie, because this was Jamie Lee Curtis's first big picture, and while she was fine, she just played the damsel in distress. It was really carried by Donald Pleasant.
Yeah, I also have to give it here to Gary B. Like, yeah, a lot of slasher movies have this formula, but when you look at the Italian movies, they often have a twist, and this thing what make the Italian movies so great, because they always come with a twist, and this is very much enjoying. And like you said, the POV from the killer's perspective is also something right out of Mario Bava's repertoire. But I think the first time it was done in Peeping Tom, which is a movie that was ahead of its time and cost the director his career, because nobody in the US wanted to hire him anymore because the movie was too real.
Can't handle that realism.
Hey, Pope Cerebus, welcome.
What's up, Pope?
We also have somebody else here, because I also sent an invite to Jeff.
What's up, guys?
What up, Jeff?
Not much. I could jump off for a little bit until I go to work, for at least for a little.
Then let's talk a little bit about Big Trouble in Little China, because this is your favorite movie.
Yeah. And
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Good job. I watched this movie, rewatched this movie today with the audio commentary by John Carpenter and Kurt Russell, and this is one fantastic audio commentary.
Yeah, the auto commentary is great, man, with it.
It's also so funny how Carpenter said that he was totally surprised that after this movie, like the left attacked him and not the right, because people thought that it was very stereotypical Chinese, and he said, yeah, but this is like, it's a homage to China.
Yeah,
to Chinese movies. It's a love letter.
Look, Asian dude likes the movie, so it's like
it got so many great elements of the Asian cinema in terms of magic and martial arts and mystical. You know, it's just like the perfect blend of all those things put into this movie, and that's what makes it so great. You know, I mean, Kurt Russell as Jack Burton,
sword and sorcery on top of that.
Yes,
so many elements.
And you know, Jack Burton is pretty much, you know, he's just this hero that's really shouldn't even be in the situation, but he just tries to play off as being a hero.
Yeah. And there's also like John Carpenter was so happy with Kurt Russell's performance, because he said it's so hard to get a leading man in Hollywood that make himself like a caricature, who is the protagonist, but it's not the protagonist. While Dennis Hunt's character was the real protagonist and was really kicking ass. Like in this, there's, you know, in this epic battle at the end when everybody was ready, like, to see Kurt Russell kicking ass, and he just shoots up and gets knocked out by a stone.
Classic. Yep.
Yeah, they're real good duo, John Carpenter and Kurt Russell. And watching the audio commentary also made me realize how intelligent Kurt Russell really is. He has a lot of knowledge about film and also about creating movies, and he has like this great chemistry with John Carpenter. And this is visible in any of their movies.
Yeah, man. It's like, and I remember looking at the list of actors work with Carpenter more than one movie, and you know, because once if you see in a couple of Carpenter movies, you see familiar faces, and there's some people that's in this movie that show up in Carpenter's later films. You know, like Victor Wong, he was in Prince of Darkness.
Yeah,
you know,
he
played well in that. I kind of wish Al Leon would have had some more in his movies. because
Yeah.
he was briefly, I mean, very briefly in They Live. And I'm like, damn it, you can't have the greatest henchman of all time in the movie and not have him be a little more part in it.
Al Leong is also somebody I always appreciate seeing in movies. Sadly, these days he's bound to a wheelchair because he had an operation with his brain, but he's still alive. But he has so much contribution to some of the most famous action things. And I always have to think back, of course, Last Action Hero, when he gets killed by the ice cone. Ice that guy, cone of phrase. Of course, he was in Die Hard as well.
He's also in,
he's in
so many movies. Like you know that hair and that mustache. The moment you see it, like, oh, that's the greatest henchman of all time, man. I tell my son, if I have a kid, like, you see that, man? Greatest henchman in all movies, man. Yeah, nobody can ever replace him.
He's also in the Cage Fighter movie with Lou Ferrigno. And there he has a very interesting role, because I don't want to spoil it when you watch the movie, but this is like a role where there's a nice twist. A fantastic actor. It's and a lot of the actors you see in these movies are mainstay within with a lot of other franchises in Hollywood, and of course James Hong. So fantastic as Lupin. Lupin. Yeah, I always have to think of him in Wayne's World 2.
Oh yeah. But he's always been a comedic actor. He's always wanted to be a comedic actor. He's never wanted to be a serious actor in the first place. I watched some of his interviews. He's always wanted to be a comedic actor. He's never wanted to be a serious type actor. And then another thing is, the guy from Fresh Off the Boat came from his school, like his acting school. Like a couple of them came from his acting school. The guy from Hawaii, the new Hawaii Five-0, that guy came from his acting school. So a lot of new Asian actors we know today came from his acting school.
Exactly, yeah. And he totally nailed this role, despite it's also a comedy, but it's not a comedy within the movie. Like, the characters are very serious characters.
Yeah.
And the way he embraced his role, fantastic.
It's
Look, he still embraces it. Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me take the thing off the wall. He still embraces it. This is him last year.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
What's up, Robert G?
Hey, Robert.
Yeah, that's James Hong last year.
Yeah, it's like a very iconic role, and it's. I mean, I haven't read the comics.
The comics is a sequel. The first comic is a sequel to this, because Carpenter actually wrote it.
Nice. I really have to because this was always a movie where I kind of wanted to have a sequel. I remember when I watched it the first time.
If you read the comic, not this one. This is the one after that one. But this is the one previous, the old Big Trouble Little China, the first series of comics from Boom, is the actual sequel to the movie, because he said this is the actual script to the movie. Awesome. He just adapted it to comics.
Yeah, I remember when I watched it for the first time, I think it was like 8 or 9 years old. And this movie fascinated me, but also scared me a lot.
It has a lot. It has some jump scares in there. It's like, it's like we said earlier, Carpenter can utilize all types of genres in one movie. You would think this is like a comedy, sci-fi, fantasy, but it's got some horrific moments in it, in terms of horror and some really scary moments in it. But he just blends it so well.
I'm a big Tsui Hark fan, and I love A Chinese Ghost Story. Their movies are so fantastic, and this Chinese mysticism, like the way they tell scary ghosts, I think Carpenter adapted that so well in this movie.
Yeah, because that's how Asian stories are most of the time. Asian horror movies are like more than likely they're gonna try to scare the crap out of you first, more than anything.
What's up, Lady
Hey.
Fantastic?
What's up, lady?
Thank you for the AOK you sent me.
Yeah, she's getting ready to send mine, and like tomorrow.
Yeah, I love Big Trouble in Little China. You know, it's one of those guilty pleasure flicks. And the one thing we talk about, VV, is the pacing of Carpenter movies. I feel like this is one of his faster paced movies.
He even says that in the audio commentary. He said he had to make this movie also faster, paced. Yeah. And this is, I think this is an.
But I feel bad. But one thing I feel bad about this movie is that I had to go against one really big movie back then.
Aliens, yeah.
Aliens. I felt bad for that because they had to go against Aliens against this. Freaking a xenomorph is gonna win.
And the funny thing about it too, not only they lost the Aliens, but they also rushed the production so they can get it out before Eddie Murphy's The Golden Child, which had similar themes.
Similar theme, exactly. James Hahn was in the movie.
Yeah, that's right. James Hahn was in the movie.
And Egg was in the movie too. He was in the movie too. So both of those guys were in the movie. It's like, are they the same people? First thing you're gonna look at.
It's always so funny because, of course, nowadays you often ask like, oh, this is such a beloved 80s movie, why did it fail? And then you look at the list of movies that came out that year, and
I went against the movies that they had to face. Dude, it's like Aliens, The Golden Child. Like, dude.
You know, these days, even before COVID, I struggle to find 2 movies a year that I'm even interested in to go to the cinema. And in the 80s, it must have been crazy. Like, you have 20 movies you want to catch in the cinema or something.
Yeah. I mean, what Gary B said, The Thing lost the E.T. You know, it's like, and that's the theme with Carpenter movies. Like, majority of them is not box office success. You know, they either get criticized or they
this
get.
This is the movie that got him to leave Hollywood too. This is the same movie that got him to leave Hollywood.
I mean, Carpenter was very lucky that he had like the success with Halloween, because then the Fog flopped, but then Escape from New York was a success, and after Escape from New York, The Thing flopped again. So he was very lucky to have always one success and one flop, because in Hollywood usually 2 flops and you're out. So he got another chance because he had success movies too. But of course, exactly, John Carpenter was a rebel, and it's always so funny because I rewatched most of the movie with audio commentary this time, and when he tells the story and they said, oh, like the young rebels and stuff, and then he was a bit sad because now I'm old.
Yeah, but like all his movies that tend to flop in the box office stuff, I said this in the post, they end up getting reevaluated later on and become cult classics. You know, people love them. And they want to say, oh, now the movie is a classic. Like, The Thing got critically slammed when it first came out. And it took a couple of years for people to realize the genius of that movie. You know, just the absolute greatness that movie presented, you know. And by the 90s, that movie was deemed a complete classic. You know, the late 90s, early 2000s. So that's what majority of his films is, that they don't get the critical acceptance until later on.
Yeah, that's also what Kurt Russell said, especially with Big Trouble in Little China, because 86, this was the time when the VHS really got big. And some of the Carpenter movie then really had a second life through VHS.
And one other thing, if you guys didn't have this, I don't think we would have had Raiden either. Raiden from Mortal Kombat at all.
Yeah.
Think about it. Yeah. We wouldn't have Raiden at all if it wasn't for this.
Mortal Kombat took a lot of the favorite movies from Boom and like the other guys, like favorite movies list.
Right.
Yeah, and VHS really gave a lot, like a second life to a lot of movies that lost the war at the cinema, the box office.
Also created the video nasty craze.
in England, the video nasties. It's always so fun because here the difference between Austria and Germany in movies is that Germany has a very strict, or had at least a very strict policy against brutal movies, while in Austria we don't even have movie laws. And therefore, most Germans import the movies from Austria because we are bringing them out uncut.
Yep. Yeah, we remember Three Ninjas and Surf Ninjas and all.
Yeah.
Fantastic movies. It's really crazy.
If you think about it, what is it? The Mortal Kombat guy, the ones that take souls is low. It's almost a low pain parody, almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's also so nice because the Lo Pan character also had something tragic. He wanted to have a body again, so he was also a great villain because you can totally see where he's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And the colors, I mean, a lot of people say, oh, old school special effects. I love these monster effects. Like this creature that almost looked like, from Dungeons and Dragons.
The thing with a bunch of eyes on it.
Exactly. That looked fantastic. And also the monster that comes in the end back on the truck.
Oh, yeah. Oh, if you guys read the comic, they actually... But the funny thing is, Burton and the damn creature become friends in the comic. They actually become like best buddies and stuff in the comics. It's pretty funny.
Obviously, and I think there's also a crossover with Escape from New
York. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. I've seen that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then there's a comic that actually Big Trouble and his they crossed over. And Carpenter actually wrote that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really like we said at the beginning of the episode that John Carpenter works now more in comics than in movies.
Yeah, because he couldn't get a sequel made, so he goes, the only way I could get the Big Trouble sequel to you guys was in comics. So that's, if you guys ever wanted to see it or read it, the Big Trouble Little China, the first volume is pretty much the sequel to this.
Yeah, I have to look out for the trade because the single issues... I think the number one is pretty pricey already.
Number one's not too bad. If it's a cover A, it's not too bad. There's a virgin cover of you know how Boom and all them come out with a bunch
the movie. I think the movie version is a little bit pricey.
Yeah.
I always love this when comics make sequels to movies.
Yeah. So guys, I gotta run. Gotta get ready for work again. So I'll see you guys.
Hey, it was great having you on, man.
Yeah. Check you guys later.
Later, man.
Yeah, later. Yeah, I sent Jeff an invite because there's no way we can talk Big Trouble in Little China without Jeff.
Yeah. So now we got Big Trouble out the way. We can go back down the list and talk about The Fog.
The Fog,
You mentioned The Fog earlier, and it's one of those movies, like I said, John Carpenter has a style where he wants to slowly build things up, and it's definitely a slow build. But what I like about The Fog is just, and it's funny because I came home from work today and I drove through a thick patch of fog and I thought of the movie. I was like, oh shit, the ghost gonna come out the fog? I just love the special effects, the usage of the fog, just the fog comes up and you automatically know shit's about to happen because those pirate ghosts is going to come on there and just start hooking the crap out of people. And the thing about it is the movie doesn't have a lot of kills. I think it's only like 6 kills, but the tension, the tension is where...
The atmosphere.
The tension and atmosphere is just mind-boggling. Like, every time the fog rolls up, man, you start to feel that tension, and the score just adds to it.
Yeah, it's when it's shortly before midnight ends, and there's the knock, and Tom Atkins goes to the door, and you're like, he's going to die now.
Yeah, I was like, no, it's too early for Tom Atkins to die.
Yeah, the atmosphere of like Gary says, is so fantastic. It's most certainly it's an old school horror movie, like a campfire story, which is also established in the beginning of the movie. And it was also funny that that Carpenter actually made it less bloodier, but the studio wanted to make it more bloodier, so they had some reshoots. You know, every time you see somebody got stabbed and slashed, it was from a reshoot, because he wanted to make it like more old school.
But when he killed those 3 guys at the beginning, it wasn't much blood at all.
I know, but this was also a reshoot.
And it still didn't really give the bloody effect. You know, like when he killed that guy inside the cabin of the boat, you know, and stabbed him in the eyes, it was so dark you couldn't really see anything. All you heard was the that's all you heard.
Which I really liked.
I'll say this, I like that effect. It's not always about the gore. You know, sometimes just hearing the sound effect gets you queasy.
Exactly. I'm a huge gore hound. I love splatter movies, but I also love scary ghost stories. And it's always, you know, these are all tools to use, and not every tool fits for every workload you have. And I think it's really good that even though the studio said he needs to add more gore, he did these scenes still in a ghostly manner, and not something that would ridicule the atmosphere. And yeah, The Fog is also one of Carpenter's brilliant soundtracks. And yeah, it's his music. You can always tell. The funny thing is, the one of his old movies where he didn't do the score, The Thing, Ennio Morricone did the score, but Morricone did it in a way that Carpenter would do it. So it sounds still very Carpenter-esque. Ennio Morricone, also sadly somebody we lost this year. Fantastic musician. And
him and Carpenter worked so well with my echo on. You got I can hear my voice.
I hear you.
Okay. I don't hear no more. So, but yeah, that theme of The Thing is just epic. You know, it's so simplistic, but so horrifying at the same time. And that's what I got with the Fog. You know, that simplistic yet horrifying theme. You know, that just sticks with you. And that's what I love, when the song sticks with you. Like when you hear The Thing theme, you start to, you know, question things around you, people around you, because, you know, they're acting weird and shit. So it's something that sticks with you as a kid when you hear a haunting theme like that.
And the Fog theme gives you like goosebumps. It's like you don't have to watch the movie. This is just something, you know, there's something out there that comes for you. And this movie is brilliant, and it's so well cast also with Adrian Barbeau. And of course,
I thought her, Tom Atkins, and the man who played the priest were the standouts for me. I didn't particularly care for Jamie Lee Curtis, because I felt anybody could have played that role. You know, because she was coming off of Halloween, Carpenter casted her, but she didn't really add nothing of interest other than being Tom Atkins' love interest. And it was completely out of nowhere. Like, she hitchhiked a ride, they ride together, and then next thing you know, they in bed. So I was like, oh, God.
It was very... this was very much like a porn love story.
It was so out of nowhere, and she really didn't add nothing to the movie. So she was just there by name, but she didn't really do much. Anybody could have played that role.
Yeah, totally. But Adrian Barbeau, she also, I think she carried the movie, especially through her voice on the radio.
Yeah, I loved her voice on the radio, and just how she came off as a character, you know, worried about her son, and what happened to the lady, you know, that was taking care of the son while she was at work. That was tough. That was tough. I'd be like, man, don't answer the door.
Yeah, this is also a movie that holds up so well, and it should have never been remade.
Fuck the remake, man.
Yeah.
Oh man. But yeah, I just love this movie. I love the atmosphere to it. When Dan got killed, I was like, man, you standing at that door way too long, man. As soon as you saw nobody, you should have closed it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to open the door, see a bunch of fog, and then keep it open. Come on now.
Like I said, that's a rule I live by. It's like, nope. And we also, I think, have to mention, since we talked about a lot of the earlier movies, like with Halloween and The Fog, and also we talked a little bit already about Escape from New York, which we will talk more about later. But a very important
that's his
role,
next movie.
But a very important role in these movies was, of course, the producer Deborah Hill.
Yes.
Who passed away in 2005.
Yes.
Way too young.
Like you can't. All of his earlier stuff had Deborah Hill with him, you know, and they were a force to be reckoned with in terms of their storytelling and production and all that stuff. You know, even though Carpenter didn't direct Halloween 2 and 3, him and Deborah Hill still had involvement in it. They were still producers with him. You know,
Halloween 2 is actually my favorite Halloween movie.
And hey, that's the movie that I talked about and said it got no love in the theaters because people wanted to see The Shape. You know, they think after they saw the first 2 movies, oh, we get more Michael Myers. And then when they got Halloween 3, you're like, what the fuck? No Michael Myers? This movie sucked. And I remember as a kid when they played the marathons, I didn't watch it as much because I was one of those as a kid that thought Michael Myers, I need to see Michael Myers. But as years went on and I actually started watching it, I was like, yo, this is not a bad movie. You know, it's actually pretty great. It's actually pretty
great. Very interesting, like Modern Witches. I really liked that movie.
Yeah, the witches, warlocks, and you know that whole part with the guy killed the old man in the beginning. I was like, God, that's kind of gruesome. Even if they ain't so
melting masks, it's absolutely.
Oh man, we'll talk about that one later, Trickster.
Yeah, we'll talk about that one later, and I love that movie.
Oh, Robert Geese wants a link.
Yeah, send a link.
But yeah, Halloween 3 is definitely one of those underrated movies, and I'm glad it's getting more appreciation. You know, and people are talking about it a lot more because this is what Carpenter wanted at the time. He wanted Halloween to be an anthology series. He didn't want it to be a franchise just based on The Shape. You know, after he did Halloween 2, he was hoping, all right, let's get away from The Shape. And I didn't even mention this about Halloween 2, that Carpenter was struggling on the script for Halloween 2 because he didn't really want to do it. He felt that the first Halloween was good enough that he just didn't feel like doing part 2. And when they said, nah, we need a part 2, we need more Michael Myers, he was struggling writing the script because he was like, what more can I do with this character? You know, like I felt like the first movie, I left it off as a pretty ambiguous way, but I don't really want to do more of it. And that's the thing with these Hollywood producers and stuff. They see money, they want sequels. And when they want sequels, they demand it. And that's the thing that with Carpenter, he doesn't do too many sequels. And there's a reason why when we get to Escape from LA later on, there's a reason why he don't do sequels, because they tend to not be as good as the original. And, you know, while he was the executive producer of Halloween 2, a lot of people actually like Halloween 2 better than the first movie. And it's mainly due to the element of it being in the hospital and Michael Myers even being more savage in that one compared to the first. I mean, him burning that lady in the acid water, that's pretty fucking vicious, man. I mean,
if you look at the first Halloween, it's not a horror movie; it's a thriller. There's nothing supernatural on it. Like it's only added later.
Yeah, they added it later, and then they added the whole Michael Myers and Laura or brother sister, which was unnecessary. You know, they ain't really had to add it because then you just want to tie these two together, and it was unnecessary. But
hey, Robert.
Hey guys, my favorite movie, my favorite. You guys are like on my subject. I love those movies. Every movie you've mentioned so far. Michael Myers. I'm sorry, everybody loves Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger. Yeah, they got their comedy moments. But you have to admit, when it came to Michael Myers, he was the most mysterious. And
that's true.
Always quiet, never said anything. I think he ran once.
Yeah.
All of a sudden he'd be after you. You'd be running for your life, And all of a sudden you'd stop. Oh, I'm okay. And all of a sudden, boom, he's right there.
Yeah. There were not a lot. There were not a lot of awkward laughs in Halloween movies until Busta Rhymes.
Oh God. Even when I saw that, I was like, they fucked the franchise with that.
I've watched it when that was the first Halloween movie I watched in cinema.
But okay, if I'm not mistaken, didn't John Carpenter have a little bit of say when it came to I have to admit, I really enjoyed Rob Zombie's first interpretation of Halloween, the first one. Okay. Didn't John Carpenter have some say in that movie?
He probably did. But
I have no idea. I think watched it once. I am not a Rob Zombie fan.
Oh. I only like some of his stuff, not all of it, but some of it is entertaining.
I only seen the first one. And I think and Carpenter had something to do with most of the remakes. Like I know he was part of the Assault on Precinct 13 and the Fog remakes and stuff. His name was there,
right?
But
that Fog remake, though.
Yeah.
I mean, executive producer can be somebody who is very much involved in the movie or somebody who wants money for making one phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but John Carpenter, hands down, I loved his rebel attitude. He didn't take any shit from no one, and if that was his creation, that's what he wanted, and that's what he was always fighting with when it came to the studios. It was a shame, but hey, yeah, there we go. I'm looking at it.
You could say that there's some Carpenter in the character that he's most famous for.
Big time.
Snake Plissken.
Yeah, that's right.
I think it's one of the best cast movies for Carpenter, of course. I think it has some pacing issues because Carpenter is not a very talented action director. So the action part in this movie is a little bit underwhelming, especially for an 80s movie. Like 81, I mean, it's still not, it's still before Commando totally changed the action genre. But I think that Assault on Precinct 13 looks like a more modern movie than Escape from New York. And Escape from New York has the strongest parts with the dialogue, with the characters, and of course the mood. And it inspired so many Italian flicks later that played on this dystopian sci-fi.
Right. I love Escape from New York, even with the pacing, because it's all about Snake Plissken doing the mission that he really don't want to do because he is against the establishment. There's a reason why every movie that he's in, whether it's this or LA, he's already arrested, for doing something that against the government. But the government needs him because they know how important and valuable he is in terms of getting things done.
Right.
Yeah, it's almost last week when we talked about Constantine. This movie feels like the same, where it's like it feels like the sequel to a movie that never happened. So the character of Snake Plissken already is established in the beginning of the movie, without us knowing his backstory. But you see him and how he talks, and everybody knows this guy has a subplot and a backstory. So it's and I think this was very well done. You immediately accept this character as a badass.
And the funny thing is, he's similar to Napoleon Wilson in terms of another character that had already established backstory. Another character that was in jail. Another character that actually has some moral compass to him. Where he teams up with the cop to get out of Precinct 13, and then they actually walk off together. So there is some elements of Napoleon Wilson in Snake Plissken. And it's just magnified by the performance by Kurt Russell and the writing of Carpenter.
Yeah, like I said, that Carpenter used a lot of the elements of Assault on Precinct 13 within later movies, which is very good because when you're a director and you're comfortable with some styles and elements, so it's good to reuse them and to build upon them. And most certainly, he he perfected what it started as Soul with the characteristics of a more ambiguous character with Snake.
Yep. And like you said earlier, the cast, like this is one of the biggest casts he had in his earlier movies. You got Isaac Hayes, you got Adrian Barbeau, you have Lee Van Cleef. Like I love Lee Van Cleef back in the day with the westerns and stuff like that. Good and bad and ugly and all that. Fantastic actor. Tom Atkins. Yeah, Tom Atkins is in this. Ernest Borgnine, another fantastic actor. No, Donald Pleasant. The cast in this movie is just top to bottom on point. Like everybody has a role and everybody plays it really well. And the score, that opening score, the opening and closing score. Oh man, you talk about pacing. That sets the tone for this movie going forward. Like you just listen to that, like dun, 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 dun. It's just sticks with you forever. Like you listen to it and you want to listen to it again. That's why I watched this movie. I gotta watch it from beginning to end after the credits. I just gotta watch it just to hear the music.
It's so brilliant. And also, when it plays into when the Duke first appears with his limousine.
Yeah, I love that theme too.
And also the guy who played I think like his main lackey was also the gang leader from Assault on Precinct 13.
Yeah.
And also, no, he was not in the movie. But it's fantastic. It's a great movie. I think it's a little bit too long, but this is my only. It's nitpicking. It's a great movie.
It is.
Your thoughts, Robert?
On what?
On Escape, man. Let's hear you talk about it, man.
I love Escape from New York, but I get where Vivi is saying that it has its slow moments, but that's just kind of like the build-up. I enjoyed it very much, very very much. But that's not one of my favorites that John Carpenter did. That's yours.
Yeah, it's mine because I
loved it. I own it, so it's excellent. One of the best.
I love it. It's not in my top 5 Carpenter movies.
Yeah, my top Carpenter movie is The Thing, and
hey, we're gonna save that for the end.
Okay.
Yeah,
we all gonna give our top 5.
Nope, that's fine. Okay, gotcha.
But we come up with
brought up The Thing.
Yeah, which is his next movie. A remake of the thing from the 51 original thing.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people forget that.
And if you ever watched the old one, you'd laugh your butt off.
I think a lot of people think more it's inspired by Mountains of Madness from Lovecraft, but it's actually really based on an older movie. Weirdly enough, the director of the original thing hated the remake.
Yep.
And he got a lot of flack because a lot of people and a lot of critics in the US just diminished this movie to be a gore fest.
Yep.
It's so much more than that, though.
Oh yeah.
It's so much more than that. It's not even truly about the gore. It's about figuring out what the hell is going on and who's the thing. Like what all this stuff is happening and you don't know who could be the thing. It's more so of a psychological mind fuck in terms of who's gonna become the thing next? Who can you trust? You cannot trust this guy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What's cool is the biological part of it.
Yeah.
How it's transferred. That's interesting part.
There's only one criticism I have with the story. I doubt that Norwegian scientists are not able to speak English. But of course, I really wonder what the Norwegian version was, because if you understand Norwegian, you get the whole plot in the beginning. It's like it was already revealed. They already say it's like this thing is like it's like a doppelganger. It's something. Shoot it.
Yep.
which was very interesting.
Well, boys, I'll let you continue. Sorry, I want to show a little support. I don't get to ever be on live shows. This is like once in a blue moon. So you guys,
always welcome to join.
I love you guys.
Always, man.
Talk to you later. I'll be watching.
Both movies, the original and the remake, of course, are based on the campus story Who Goes There, with their own spin.
But you know what the funny thing about this movie is that it is still being broken down to this day. People are still analyzing it. There's so many theories and so many videos trying to explain who became the thing first. You know, what time period in terms of who became the thing is, you know, and all that stuff. They're trying to break down. Even the ending is still something that people question and people talk about.
The ending is actually revealed in the video game, and Carpenter says it's canon.
I know, but people still don't really look at the video game at that, you know, because some people think the video game is not that good. So if it ain't that good, people are going to just ignore it. But, you know, to this day, people still like to analyze this movie. And when 30 plus years later and you're still analyzing this movie, that shows you how much of a long-lasting impact this movie has on people.
Yeah, I still think that the thing would have worked better as a 45-minute short movie.
I love the timing of the movie, just like Escape from New York. I will disagree with you on that.
Okay, it's a completely fine to disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I understand your criticism, but at the same time, for me, I felt that it was perfect in terms of length. You know, it really helped the characters actually, you know, figure out what's going on, and you're there in this thick tension. And I felt like if it was shorter, you probably wouldn't have got too much. If it's longer, then you get too much. I felt like the time was just right for this movie.
I think canon-wise, Charles is the thing and dies, and that McReady is the only one who survives as a human. But it's just a canon thing. But of course, a lot of people don't accept the video game as having a part in it.
Yeah, it's like I've seen so many arguments based off this ending of this movie, and you know, people just going on for days, just continue to break this ending down. And like I said, it's still analyzing it 30 years later. You know, the people don't want to make their own theories on it and stuff, and say, you know, go through the whole movie, do 30-minute to an hour-long video breaking this movie down. And that shows the staying power that this movie has, is that when people are still actually breaking it down. I watched a video from like a couple of weeks ago where a guy broke the movie down. It's pretty fascinating. But again, there's many of them on YouTube. There's many of people breaking this movie down. And that's just how great this movie was, that people to this day are still talking about.
Yeah, rightfully so, because this movie has such a great insight into human psyche. And it is also like, we had a Rattlesnake Liskans, like a character, you know, there's more backstory to. They wanted to add a backstory. I mean, they have written a backstory that he was a Vietnam War vet. And this is also when McReady says in the movie, you know, I have a very light sleep and stuff. So, you know, like there's more behind the character, why he's so capable and everything.
Yeah.
But I always laugh it more when the movie just shows a kick-ass character without the exposition, because it's enough for the audience, I think, that he sells it well through action in a movie. And I think it was a good idea to not talk about, oh, he's a Vietnam vet, etc., but really let the character of McReady build throughout the movie. And this was also the movie that brought John Carpenter to another actor he loved to use in other movies, Keith Davis.
The debut of Keith Davis.
Yeah.
And he nailed it as Charles. And you know what the funny thing is? Ernie Hudson was close to getting this role.
Would have been a great decision too. Like, I would never argue against Ernie Hudson.
Yeah, Ernie was close to getting this role before Keith David came and just stole all the thunder. But Keith David has the voice, you know, like his voice alone is just iconic. But man, he really Like for this to be his debut movie and to actually knock it out the park, that tells you something because he has a theater background and stuff. So all he had to do was learn how to act and not show emotion, and that's exactly what the child's character is. He doesn't show a lot of emotion, except for when he's tied to a chair and say, "Get me the fuck off this chair."
And it's rightfully one of the characters who was there in the ending because he was really one of the characters you didn't want to die.
Yeah.
Like I would say, I think the movie would be more dense if it would be shorter. But of course, this is very much.
I like Keith David, but I'm not going to say that Ernie Hudson wouldn't have done a fantastic job. You know, what Pope Service saying, because Ernie Hudson is one of those actors that just doesn't get enough recognition. Like I think he could have did this part really well with his character.
Ernie Hudson was in Oz, and he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, Keith
like
David
not in Wizard of Oz, but in Oz, the HBO series.
I didn't like the Hand That Rocked the Cradle that much.
But it's like I always say, Ernie Hudson makes every movie better. But it's let's just say if you're a director and you can choose between Keith Davis and Ernie Hudson, you have a luxury problem.
Yeah, because it's tough. But I probably would go with Keith David just because he has a presence about him, and that voice really makes him stand out even more.
Yeah,
but both guys are amazing, man.
Both are fantastic, and it's one of the classic cases where you can't choose wrong. If Ernie Hudson would have gotten the role, everybody would be probably in awe of his performance.
And the funny thing is, Ernie Hudson was in that Thing ripoff movie Leviathan from like '89.
Alien.
He was the best thing in that movie, and that movie had what's his name, RoboCop in it.
Yeah.
It had his name. It had Richard Sumner from Rambo. It had a lot of actors in it, and he was the best actor in there.
This is also a movie we have to talk about it. Yes, John Carpenter says that the video game is canon. Like the master himself said it. It's also a very interesting audio commentary for the thing, which I totally recommend. Actually, like it's so great to have the audio commentaries of John Carpenter with almost every Carpenter movie, and he adds so much insight to everything. So I totally recommend it. Yeah, Peter Weller.
Peter Weller.
We totally have to talk about Leviathan in a future episode.
God damn. All right, so we're on the list now. So we done talked about The Thing. So now we go on to the movie that I know is one of your least favorites, and it's a middle tier movie for me. It's not the Carpenter's best, and it's not one of Stephen King's best, but I do like the elements in this movie, and we're going to talk about Christine, the famous '58 Plymouth Fury that goes on a rampage and actually has a hellish spirit inside or something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to try and compare the book to the movie because the book is different from what the book and the movie came out the same year. You know, so by the time Stephen King was putting this book together, the movie was in post-production. So that's one of those weird cases where the movie and the book came out in the same year. But the thing I like about Christine, and this is something that actually do happen in real life, is people who become obsessed with materialistic things, or in this case, a car. They let a vehicle become their actual friend, their baby, and they start treating that thing more than treating friends and family. And it speaks to the volume of how we as a society can fall into that trap of valuing things more than actual human life and taking it for granted that, you know, you got this car and you spent your money on it. And then once the car actually becomes fascinating to you, you start spending more time appreciating it more and becoming obsessed with it. And the car just has this demonic spirit in it. Even though it's not demonic to the host, it's demonic to anybody that treats it poorly. I mean, the whole beginning of the movie, a guy gets his hand crushed because he opened up the hood, and that's like, man, it's like Christine is like, you looking under my skirt, bam, smash his hand. And then the brother sits in the car. He like, oh, I'm feeling this. I'm vibing, playing the music and all. Then he drops some ash on the seat. Christine like, what the fuck? I'm a clean ass car. I just came off the assembly line. You dropping shit on me, dead. And I'm like, shit, what the fuck? This car is crazy. But once the car is loved by somebody who loves it, she actually responds to it by saying, I'm gonna love you back. And the funny thing about this movie is the music that plays from the 50s actually ties into the kills in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, when you actually listen to it, it's like you pretty much setting your death up by playing the music. So the music is its form of communication as a way of telling somebody that either you love or you're gonna die. And
that's something. That's something what Edgar Wright copied in Hot Fuzz.
Yeah, and you know, it's something that was actually pretty cleverly done. And you know, I just like the Arnie's descend into sociopath. You know, where the car just completely took control of him. You know, he loved that car so much now that he become one with the car. And the movie isn't that great, but at least I admire the whole psychological thriller of somebody just becoming so obsessed with something that's actually possessed and just completely. He went from a nerd to a greaser to a freaking crazy sociopath by the end of the movie. And I liked that element of the movie. You know, I felt like it's not even about the car. It's about the descent into madness that this character has gone through. You know, it's a slow and boring movie, but when you really look at it from a psychological standpoint, it makes sense because people out there are like that. You know, they value this thing more than others, and sometimes it just backfires on them, and somebody loses a life. Whereas Arnie just didn't care. He was so obsessed with that car that he and the car went happily ever after into the sunset and just disappear. No, that's
I totally agree with you. I will never understand how people can value materialistic stuff over human life, but yeah, it's something we as comic book collectors we can all relate to. Like you said, I really liked like how this relationship was shown. Funny thing is, when I rewatched the movie, for half of the movie until I researched it, I thought that a young Patrick Wilson was playing the role of Arnie because it totally looks like Patrick Wilson. But it's just, I'm absolutely not interested in cars. So this movie actually bored me. And also, I'm not a big fan of Stephen King writing novels. He's a lot better with short stories. It was not a movie for me.
That's understandable. Because when you look at the history of vehicles, a lot of people value, especially American vehicles, they valued those cars back in the 50s and 60s, the Plymouths and, you know, the Dodge Chargers and the Mustangs and stuff like that. People actually loved those fucking cars, man. Like, you couldn't even think of people who valued those cars even more so than people themselves. And, you know, I felt like this movie, while not Carpenter's best and stuff, it still had this element of psychological warfare on one person that a vehicle can do. And if that vehicle is possessive and can kill people, then it really just adds to the tension of what this character is going through. Because like I said, the movie isn't really about the car. It's about Arnie and his descent into madness. You know, that to me is, and he played that role to perfection, and how he went from a nerdy teen to a greaser who's overconfident and now getting the girls because of the car. And you know how it is. You know, if you got the hot car, the girls will come, and that's exactly what happened to him. And then just to continue descent into madness of falling in love with this car actually led to his death. because the fucking car ain't had no seatbelts or something. So when it hit the damn wall, he flew out the damn window and got impaled. And then you see the emotional attachment that he had to that car. That car actually played a sad song of his death. You know, like it was really sad. Like, and by the time he's getting crushed by that bulldozer, you know, the car's like, fuck it, man. I lost the love of my life. I might as well just lose. And one thing I do want to mention, the special effects in this movie on the car and how it rebuilt, fantastic for something that was made in 1983. Yeah. They did a marvelous job with how that car was being rebuilt. Yeah.
Yeah. The effects are fantastic. And the funny thing is, the way you describe the movie is way more interesting than the actual movie itself.
I just looked at it from a more psychological standpoint. You know, it's just somebody that just falls into that trap of loving their car more and more to the point where they don't care about anybody else. And like I said, that car ride that he had with Blake, you could just see this character just completely lost it. But it was so well acted, you know, and that the movie is average, but at the same time, it still has well acting in it. And the special effects is just mind-boggling for 1983. So that's my take on Christine.
I totally have to agree with you. It's just a movie that thematically didn't work for me. Like, I can appreciate the psyche between the car and the protagonist, but it was just a movie that thematically was not in my alley. Which is also, I think, true to the next one, which is from 1984, Starman, a movie I have never watched and I didn't watch this week.
Yeah, I didn't watch it neither.
Yeah. So let's skip this romantic sci-fi experiment of John Carpenter. Maybe it's a brilliant movie. Probably I will never know.
I can't remember. And the funny thing is, he was supposed to do that other movie based on the Stephen King novel. The one with Drew Barrymore when she was a girl. Damn, I can't remember it now. It was in my head. Firestarter.
Oh,
yeah, he was supposed to do that, but that fell through.
I haven't heard anything of Firestarter since I was a kid. Only know the Prodigy song.
So now we get to dive into the Prince of Darkness.
Yeah, since you already talked about Big Trouble in Little China, Prince of Darkness is very much a mood piece. It's a slow burner, but when you watch it and you're in the right mood for a wonderful occult apocalyptic movie, which is also part of the apocalyptic trilogy of Carpenter. I think The Thing is part of it, The Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness. And Prince of Darkness it's really like a movie that works you. What I like about it is that the characters are, like, again, are very well cast, and you actually don't want anybody to die from this group. So
yeah, there's not really anybody that you actively hate. You know, they're just a bunch of students. You know, that's what they are. You know, getting involved into something they have no idea that they're getting involved.
Yeah, Carpenter did Starman. Yes, and I also love the whole topic, this mixture of science and religion. Carpenter also said this was a topic that very much interested him at that point. And of course, he then made it into a movie. I absolutely love the tricks shown in this movie. They're very easy special effects because there was not a lot of money available. But like the scene, you know, when you had like the evil that was like dropping upwards, of course, they just changed the perspective of the camera. And the mirror effects in the end, they did actually with Quicksilver. Like in post-production.
That was phenomenal.
Yeah. And it was also very gory. And also the special appearance by Alice Cooper was very interesting. Carpenter said that he actually met Alice Cooper during a WrestleMania.
Yeah, it was the same WrestleMania that he talked with Roddy Piper. That's what led to They Live. WrestleMania 3.
Yeah. So very interesting choice. Alice Cooper also really, he has a small part in this movie, but very much convincing.
Yeah, he was the one that killed the nerdy guy with the glasses, stabbed him right in the gut with that messed up bike. They had to give Alice Cooper at least a kill.
Yes, and this was also part of the deal because Alice Cooper had like this stick which is retractable, and Carpenter said you get the role, but you have to bring the stick with you.
Of course, this is another role played by Donald Pleasant, which he excelled in.
Fantastic.
And I love the whole conflict between him and Walter Kong's character. With what they're getting involved with. Like, Kong believes in science, but the whole religious aspect, he's questioning, that whole aspect of it. And, I just love the whole, are we really getting involved with this? Like, why couldn't y'all really keep this contained? And you would think that if they just left it in that room, none of this wouldn't have happened. And the future visions that they was getting of the Prince of Darkness coming through that door was actually damn near good. I had to use that picture in my post on IG because it's just an amazing visual. And all the people that got involved with it, you did feel bad for them when they got taken over.
Yeah, like none of them deserved any of that. Right?
They were just there to do a little physics project, not knowing that this thing is evil. You would think that green liquid, the personification of Satan himself, that's what it was. And when it got that girl, and she became a disciple of Satan, she became fucking scary with that look that she had on her face. Like,
the makeup was brilliant. To say the least, it was really, this is what I like in horror movie with makeup. What I sometimes criticize with modern horror. Like that, like gory makeup looks still way too clean. In this movie, they look disgusting, and I think like something like that should look disgusting because this adds to the atmosphere, and this is very much an atmospheric horror movie. And like I said, also like the battle between science and religion. I also like very much that that Carpenter let both sides he treated both sides with respect, which is of course also very interesting when you analyze this movie. What is it like? Is this a scientific problem? Is this a religious problem?
Can I just mention how the opening credits goes for 10+ minutes with that amazing theme song? It's like by the time we finally see directed by John Carpenter, it's 10.5 minutes into the movie. And I love how the music is loud when they show the names, and then when they focus on the character, it plays in the background. And you just hear dun dun dun. Oh man, the score in this movie is just amazing.
Yeah. Soylent Green is not a Carpenter movie, but spoiler alert, Soylent Green is people. Yeah, it's. I think it's one of the more underrated Carpenter movies that deserves more recognition, most certainly.
And it's definitely something that I can watch again.
Yeah,
like it's one of those movies that I didn't watch much, and then, like I said, this past week I watched it for like the first time in I don't know how long, and I really enjoyed it. Like, because I couldn't remember much of it. It's one of those movies that it probably just passed me by. I seen a couple of scenes and then that was it. But yeah, I just love Prince of Darkness, and I can't wait till we get to the third part of the Apocalypse trilogy, which is In the Mouth of Madness. But yeah, fantastic movie.
Yeah, one of my favorites. But after the Prince of Darkness, of course, 1 year later, 1988. One of the most iconic dystopian sci-fi movies of all time, They Live.
The Hot Rod.
Yes. Kurt Russell was busy shooting another movie, but luckily John Carpenter made contact with Roddy Piper during WrestleMania 3 and decided to cast him into the movie, which was one of the first, I think it was the first serious main protagonist role for a wrestler.
I have to say, you know, Piper did a really good job, and he even said in the audio commentator that he was led by Carpenter. You know, he relied on Carpenter a lot. Yeah, Keith David is in this one too.
Yeah.
And you know, I like the Carpenter and Piper on the audio commentary, man. They just played off of each other like.
Yeah, so
it was amazing hearing those two guys talk. Sadly, Roddy Piper is no longer with us, but you know, he's one of those just engaging personalities that when you hear him talk, you know you're gonna get some funny bits in there and stuff like that. And him and Carpenter just feed off each other.
I absolutely love the part when Roddy Piper starts shitting on Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon, and then it's, but you're probably not interested in this. And John Carpenter's like, no, go on. It's interesting.
Any chance he gets to shit on Hulk Hogan is awesome, man.
Yeah, it's and he's really good in this movie. Of course, he's not a trained actor, but I'm always a big fan of wrestlers in movies because, you know, when you're a good wrestler, you're a very good entertainer and you know how to create emotion in people, whether it's like a heat or pop. And Roddy Piper really plays that well in this movie. And he also, I think what also Carpenter said, what he really liked about his performance is that it felt so real, because a lot of the stuff, like being homeless, etc., was something that Roddy Piper had to go through it before it became a household name. What you hear very often from wrestlers that were later successful, that they had a very, like in the beginning, they lived on the streets and had it very tough to come to the top. And this is something that Piper totally brings to this movie. And the movie deals actually, you know, it's a movie that sadly ages very well in terms of these are still topics that are relevant today with homeless people and of course with media of either side, like misleading people.
The whole subliminal messages that was in this movie, you know, the obey, resist, no thoughts. It's very, what you would say, common today with how things are with the media and, you know, who we got in the office. This movie was ahead of its time in terms of the critical thinking that Carpenter was going through, putting these elements in this movie. You know, he was so
like this was his big middle finger to the Reagan era.
Pretty much. Mm-hmm. You know, this movie was just so fantastic, and you know, the whole alien design. You know, with I remember when I was a kid, I was like, "What the motherfuckers look weird as fuck? What is that? Like, is that how aliens look?" When I was like, "Get the hell out of here!" But man, it's just so out there that you don't know what, and that's the thing. We don't know what aliens look like. You know, we still have not really truly experienced what an alien is. You know, from something from way out of space. You know, so there's always been different interpretations of aliens. That's just an alien form that probably took the endoskeleton of a human and said, "We're just going to look like this."
By the way, Omega Man, brilliant Charlton Heston movie, and there's a Elvira Kickstarter project with Dynamite Comics right now, the Omega Man, about Elvira's time in quarantine, and this looks very funny, so go back to the comic. Yes, and also this movie, besides Keith David and Roddy Piper, well cast, Meg Foster is so eerie in this movie.
I'm still trying to figure out how the hell dude get knocked out of that fucking apartment complex and survive. Yeah. I mean, she backhanded him in the head with the glass bottle, and he went flying out, man.
Yeah, the fight scenes are over the top in this movie, which
I love it though. You know why? Because it's original, it's a brawl, and there's no fucking shaky cam or quick cuts.
Exactly.
That is right there is how you film a fight. When the camera is shaking and there's so many quick cuts, I just lose my mind because my mind is fried from all this shit I'm seeing. I can't focus on the fight. This one, he said in the audio comment, he set up 3 cameras, getting from all angles. And they just went at it. You know, they rehearsed this in Carpenter's backyard for like 3 weeks.
1 month, yeah.
Yeah, 3 weeks to a month. And they got it down to a perfection on that shot. And I'm like, that's how you film a fight, a brawl. You know, 2 guys just slugging it out over a pair of sunglasses. It's like, it's mind-boggling that they're fighting because one guy don't want to put on sunglasses. It's crazy. But at the same time, the fight was awesome.
Yeah, like I said, it was over the top. It wouldn't work probably in another movie, but Keith Davis and Roddy Piper made it work because they put the effort in it. Yeah,
and with Piper being a wrestler, you got to see wrestling moves, the backdrop, you know, a suplex. You got to see, I'm like, yo, put these guys in the main event of WrestleMania, they kill it.
Yeah. Keith Davis, both say that Keith Davis put so much work in, and Piper and him had a very great chemistry together. I love this movie. I remember when the first time I watched it, I think it was 12 or 13 when I watched it, and this movie back then blew my mind.
Yeah, it's a great movie, and then of course I like hearing Carpenter and Piper talk about the improvised line of I have come here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum. That line has been used in so many other projects and stuff, spoofed and all that stuff. The real Ghostbusters used that. You know, I remember the episode where they were trapped in the haunted house and Peter Venkman.
IT Crowd used it with I came here to drink milk and kick ass and all of milk.
I love this movie though, man. It's one of my favorites. You know, definitely a great. It's not in my top 5. It's right there, number 6. But I love They Live. It's a great movie. Piper does a fantastic job. Keith David. I was kind of bummed when he got killed at the end. I was like, fuck, he couldn't make it to the end.
But everybody dies in the end, like from the protagonist.
Yeah, I was glad Meg Foster died, and she's also in Leviathan as well.
Yeah, it's what I love about this movie. First of all, it has a very intelligent message. It's a very intelligent movie that is still a fun movie.
Yeah,
and this is something very hard to pull off if you don't have Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I can imagine the one-liners if Schwarzenegger was in this. He'd throw a bunch of one-liners out there. Yeah, I love the line though when he was in the store. Like you all right? Yeah, she real fucking ugly.
Carpenter did so many iconic movies within so many genres. It would be crazy if he would not have influenced modern movie making. But the problem nowadays is that a lot of directors are shooting scenes and not scripts. And then movies are just are not well-rounded nowadays. Somebody who took total inspiration from Carpenter. I forgot the name of the director, but the guy who did It Follows. One of my favorite horror movies, and It Follows is a brilliant homage to Carpenter. And the director also did Under the Silver Lake, which is also a very Carpenter-esque movie. So I think Carpenter influenced a lot of people. I wish he would have influenced even more because then we would have better movies nowadays. But also he was influenced, of course, by Italian movie makers and other filmmaker. So it's always like you always give to the next generation.
I definitely think he had a big influence on modern films. Pretty much, Remo.
Yeah. I will talk about that one later. Yep. Yeah, so a lot of directors use the same actors over and over again because they have trust with the characters, and they also already know that this movie will function with this character. And sometimes even when they write a movie, they have a certain actor in mind they already worked with. So
and some of them are like, you have your big namers like your Donald Pleasant and Kurt Russell and stuff, and then you got some of the mid-tier, the lower tier actors who are in almost all his movies. They be like in 5, 6, 7 of his movies.
I think that Tarantino, because Tarantino cast later Kurt Russell, and I don't think that Tarantino would have cast Kurt Russell in so many roles if he wouldn't have watched him in Carpenter movies. But
Tarantino definitely took influence from Carpenter movies.
Yeah, I mean, I like Tarantino movies, but I think Tarantino is one of the best copyists in movie history. He makes things his own in the end, but he copies like all my favorite movies. So I rather rewatch my favorite original movies like Lady Snowblood or The Mercenary before I watch a Tarantino movie. Mm-hmm. But he's a very talented filmmaker.
So I know we're going to skip the next movie because he actually, and this is a movie I didn't know he directed, and that was Memoirs of the Invisible Man.
I've seen, like I said in the pre-show, I've seen the movie, I think, when I was 8 years old. I love Chevy Chase. I love National Lampoon, the National Lampoon films with him. He's great in Community. He's probably not the nicest person to be around. But I really like him as an actor. I remember liking this movie very much when I was a kid, but I haven't watched it in ages.
Yeah, I've seen it as a kid, but the only thing I remember about it was Sam Neill's death.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I remember. And this was Sam Neill's first time working with Carpenter, which would lead to the next movie on our list.
Yeah. I have to let you entertain the audience for a bit because I have to take a leak. It's a long story.
All right. Yeah, I agree, Remo. Django could have been a John Carpenter flick because Carpenter actually used westerns throughout some of his movies. His Assault on Precinct 13 is like a western. It was based off of Rio Bravo with John Wayne, and Vampires, of course, has the western feel to it. Later, Lasso, Tarantino was more influenced by Goddard. That's true, but he definitely took some elements from Carpenter. Tarantino is one of those guys that's influenced by a lot. Whether it's blaxploitation films, some of the early Carpenter movies and stuff like that. But he definitely has some influence on other directors. One of the things I like about Carpenter is he always has themes in his movies. And it's always usually against the government. He's always going up against the government, whether it's They Live or, movies like Escape from New York, where he defies the orders of his superiorities and don't give him the real tape, actually shreds the tape that the president needed to give the information out to the world. So Carpenter's always been set his movies up to be against the government. Now we're going to talk about In the Mouth of Madness.
Tell me, do you read Sutter Kane?
Sutter Kane. that scene where the guy pops up and asks him that question before he meets his demise actually was a nice prelude to what will come later on.
Yeah,
I love this movie because of just how it talks about reality and fiction, and then it just says, well, now this fiction is reality. And, you know, when you talk about In the Mouth of Madness, you talk about going straight into the mouth of madness and coming out as a madman, which is what exactly Sutter Kane is. You know, he's a writer who's written himself in so many horror stories, written books about horror so much that he's actually become quite mad. He goes to this town that doesn't even exist, that he created in his own book. And I felt like I've seen this story before, but I'm trying to think of it, because if I'm not mistaken, this is something I've seen where they go into a town that doesn't exist, that's part of a book, and, you know, they try and find their way out of it. And this is exactly what this movie is about.
It's certainly the most Lovecraft-inspired movie by John Carpenter. John Carpenter is a big H.P. Lovecraft fan, and Sutter Kane, who is basically like Stephen King. Like, Stephen King is also a big Lovecraft fan. So this is a beautiful love letter to cosmic horror, and yeah, and the end of time. Like it's part of, it's like the finale of the apocalyptic trilogy. Yes. And as somebody, like, I loved reading H.P. Lovecraft story when I was younger. I always loved H.P. Lovecraft and the concept of madness, like a character slowly getting mad, and the world around him, like the concept of reality breaking apart. This is, I think, this is the best visualization of madness and breaking of reality in film.
I will agree. And Sam Neill played it perfectly.
I love Sam Neill.
And I will say that the man who plays Sutter Kane, I can't pronounce his name. I know it's Porch now.
Yeah, Jürgen Prochnow.
I'm not gonna say it how you say it, like you rolled it off the tongue. So
now he's German. So.
But you know, I forgot that he was the villain in Beverly Hills Cop 2. He got bested by Axel Foley.
Yeah, he's famous here for Das Boot.
But he played that role perfectly as Sutter Kane. Like, you actually see this man. Like, the moment you first see him, they're like, yeah, that's a crazier looking version of Stephen King. And I thought Stephen King looked crazy.
And do you remember the small kid on the bike in the movie?
Yeah, when he turned old, or yeah. When they was driving down that road, they see him as young, and then the next time they see him, he old.
Yeah, it's Anakin Skywalker, Hayden Christensen.
Yo, that was crazy, man.
This movie is one fantastic trip, and you know, if people criticize this movie for not having like a coherent plot,
I understood. Bro, the plot didn't even lose me.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, I knew exactly what was going to happen. Like, soon as you get towards that halfway point, I was like, I kind of see where this is going.
Yeah, I think most certainly it's an easier movie to accept if you have read Lovecraft or other horror stories where the fabric of reality is very thin, and this movie just nails it.
I like the whole what's his name? His partner, Linda Stiles, played by Julia Carmen. I like how when she gets to see the whole book, when she meets Sutter Kane, and she reads the whole book by, you know, him putting her head into the book, and then when she went to hug him, you see the back of his body, and it was disgusting, but at the same time, it just shows you how corrupted he's been. You know, like, he's been in this fictional world for so long now that he is part of it, you know. and that his books sold so many copies now that he just want to finish off In the Mouth of Madness. Boom, done. Now, as soon as this book gets published and the movie gets published, woo, he knew that shit was gonna cause mass chaos.
Yeah, I love how this movie treats metaphysics. It's
I mean, just the drive to get the Hobbs in was trippy as fuck. That was one of the trippiest drives to get there, and then once you get in, you can't get out because when what's his name tried to escape, bro, it just put him right back in the center of town. I've seen this before though. It was an episode that I watched that was similar to it. I can't remember it.
I mean, it's not a new concept, of course. It's around, and H.P. Lovecraft basically made it famous for the modern generation. But of course, it goes back to Greek philosophy and everything.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying I'm trying to remember what I saw because there was a couple of things I saw this concept, but the movie did a great job by expanding on it.
And I think it's sad that we don't see a lot of movies that are playing with those themes in a good way. There's a lot of movie who tries to do so. There's I mean, From Beyond also tries with this concept, the adaptation of the Lovecraft story, but it's a little bit too humorous for me, even though I loved that movie. But The Mouth of Madness, I think, is the only movie who really nails it in a very serious way without making it ludicrous.
I will say that this was, at least from my standpoint, that this was Carpenter's really last best movie in terms of just the Carpenter feel, the horror, and the writing. Like, I felt like all his movies that followed this were decent to good, but wasn't as great as this. Like, I felt like this was his last truly great movie, in my opinion.
I would agree in a term that this is his last movie that feels cinematic. His later works, even though I love some of these movies, and one of these movies is even in my top 5, they have more of a direct-to-video feel.
Plus, you could see the change in styles. He started using more modern. That time, CGI. You know, when CGI was starting to come in, you could see him using little elements of him in his movies.
Totally, and of course, also the way filming, how the film changed, like from film to digital, and this is something I love in stuff is shot on film. It just feels more real than digital. And this is also why a lot of these movies look so fantastic in a 4K restoration, because it's way easier to restore something that is on film than something that is shot digitally, because then you get pixelations. I heard from people that a lot of the Marvel movies look worse in 4K because it actually works against them when you enhance things. But while you are working with film, you basically can. It's because a film doesn't have pixels. You can basically enhance it to the max of what we can do with technology now. And yeah, that's Mouth of Madness is his last movie that felt like being shot in the golden era of modern film. I have to watch the next movie. I have never watched the remake of Village of the Damned.
I didn't watch this recently. Like I said, when we was getting down to these last nitty gritty. I want us to watch some of the movies that I haven't watched in a while. And you know, when you look at Village of the Damned, I remember that movie for 2 reasons. Number one, those kids were fucking creepy. Those kids were creepy as hell. And then number 2, this was Christopher Reeve's last movie because of the whole paralyzed. He got paralyzed on the horseback ride, and that was sad, you know, because he's a phenomenal actor that always got the short end of a stick. Because outside of Superman, there's not too many movies that he's done that, you know, gotten critical acclaim, or people's like, yo, that was a great movie by Christopher Reeves. Like, I think that movie he did with Morgan Freeman in the 80s was really good, but nobody really talked about it. So it's kind of a shame that his career got cut short after this movie due to the paralyzing accident, or before the movie, because he got paralyzed before the movie came out.
Yeah. Like I said, I've never watched it, because I remember it was not so much it was not really available here, because it was when it came out in the same year as In the Mouth of Madness, but it doesn't feel like it came out in the same year. And it was not very much available for it. I knew already the original movie, and the original movie I'm not a big fan of already, so I didn't bother watching the remake. But what I was very much looking forward to was the follow-up to Escape from New York.
LA.
Escape from LA in 1996. And I mean, now this escape from LA to Texas, as I hear from a lot of people living in California. But back in the days, if you didn't behave in a society, you were brought to LA.
I liked this movie, but I didn't love it, because it's too much like New York, and you know, everything felt the same. You know, like straight from, you know, being arrested by the government and then being told this situation, like, oh, if you don't get this job done, you'll die. You know, they inject him and stuff, and then he goes into LA, goes beat a couple people, and people say, Snake, please, I thought you were dead. It was pretty much the same in New York. And one of the things I didn't like about it is that it really adopted the LA glam, because New York had that dark and grittiness. You know, like when you watch it, New York just looked dirty and gritty. Whereas LA, yes, it's desolated, it's destroyed, but it still had this glamorous look to it. And I didn't like how the picture from the video frames and stuff, I didn't like how it looked. It just looked too bright compared to the darkness of New York.
Yeah.
And while Kurt Russell did a fine job, you know, he is Snake. He did a great job. You had Steve Buscemi in it, which he was great as a humorous character. And Pam Grier threw me off when she started talking. I was like, what? that was fine, but did not like this one. It's one of those movies that only watch in small doses. I just didn't like Escape from LA as much.
I like this movie as a classic like grindhouse flick.
That's what it feels like. It feels like the earlier stages of that grindhouse, but it just didn't fit what I liked it about New York.
It's it's not a good sequel, but it's still a very entertaining movie. I remember when I watched it for the first time, because I'm a big Bruce Campbell fan, and I wasn't able to find Bruce Campbell in this movie when I watched it for the first time. Until later, it's like, he was the Surgeon General. That scene was very well done. I really love the surgeon scene. It has a certain creepiness. It also really, you know what the funny thing about it is? It feels like an Italian ripoff of Escape from New York, and this is why I like it as a movie. But I think that you could have explored so much more with the character of Snake Plissken.
I agree with that. I felt like it's too much of the sameness of that character and not enough new things with the character. You know, they didn't really go more into developing his character. It's like, well, Snake Plissken's in the same situation he was in New York. Let's throw him in that and not even go through the back. Like, I want to know why he keeps saying, I thought you was dead. Like, is there some type of backstory that if you're gonna do a second movie, I know you want to keep his history more like a clouded history, you know, his covered up. But at the same time, it's like I want to know more about this character other than just the same old, same old.
Yeah, it's like if every Friday we would start the stream with like, I thought you were dead. Yeah, it's a guilty pleasure for sure.
I mean, like I said, it's a fine movie, but I just felt that for a sequel, it didn't really expand on it. I like the creativity of the ending and how he shut the world down, and I didn't think the villain was that interesting, like compared to Isaac Hayes. Isaac Hayes didn't have a lot of dialogue, but yet he was an imposing villain.
Yes,
the guy in this movie was
the
like
moment you saw him, Isaac Hayes had just this charisma, this aura around him, and this is something what a villain should have, and this is also something what really was very well done in the next movie he did 2 years later, Vampire.
Freaking Pope Service. Even the characters couldn't believe Pliskin was alive and doing this movie. And I don't intensely dislike LA. It's not the movie that, I mean, that freaking basketball scene was crazy too. I'm like, really?
I love camp that still is coherent within its world.
I did not like Snake Plissken had to shoot a bunch of shots just to survive. I'm like, the fuck out of here, man. That was what, besides the surf scene, that basketball scene like really irritated me at the time, because I'm like, I'd rather watch Snake fight that dude that he did in New York than watch this.
Which was a fantastic scene in Escape from New York, the wrestling.
Yeah. New York just felt like I could probably walk into that same LA and not fear anything compared to going to New York and actually like, yo, this fucking place, I'm afraid to walk down the streets of New York. Whereas LA, it just didn't have that same fear to it.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like I said, it's like if you watch it as a rip-off movie for like midnight with popcorn, very much entertaining. You get your entertainment out of it, but being the long-awaited sequel to Escape from New York, that's why people disliked it when it came out, because they were sold on the premise that this is like the sequel to an acclaimed movie.
And this is why I say Carpenter really don't like doing sequels, because majority of the time he passes up on the sequels. I didn't even know there were sequels to the vampire movie that we're about to talk about. There were two other sequels. Yeah, there's sequels. I looked that shit up. It's 2 more sequels. And Carpenter had a part in the second one, but not the third one. But I was like, that's why Carpenter don't do sequels. And Escape from LA proves that he shouldn't do sequels.
I have to watch the vampire sequels because I absolutely love vampires. It's so dark, gritty. I think it's one of his best paced movie with a slow build up, and I never thought that James Woods could be so cool.
Anything James Woods, I tend to love, because I agree with what Carpenter said in one of interviews I was listening to, that James Woods is the type of person that even you put him up against vampires, he show no fear. He just have this crazed look on his mind, like, I'm gonna kill all these fucking vampires, and that's how I always see James Woods, as an actor, in some of his movies, And
when you look at his Twitter account, it still is true. Like I said last time, is back then he hunted vampires in films, and now he hunts liberals on Twitter.
You don't give a fuck, man. He's a savage like that.
Yeah,
he's a savage like that.
He's all out of fucks to give, and in this movie, I couldn't think anyone better in that role than he. He's the epitome of coolness and yeah, the epitome of coolness. This movie is also otherwise so well cast. Of course, I think Griffith played the vampire, and he's so imposing as the lead vampire.
Yeah, he's like they cast him just to be an imposing figure, and when he opens up that door and shred that dude, I was like, what?
Such a crazy movie, and it has one of the lesser Baldwins, Daniel Baldwin, in it.
Yeah. There's a reason why he's the lesser Baldwin.
Yeah, but he still has the voice of a Baldwin, so that works for him. Because the voice of a Baldwin is always awesome. And then it also has a very famous actor from my country in it who sadly passed away a few years ago, Maximilian Schell. He played Cardinal Alba. And I loved his portrayal in this movie, especially since he tried to talk with more like an Italian accent and not with a German accent. And he really nailed it.
Yeah, when he turned heel, I was like, oh, man.
Yeah.
Look, I will say that there aren't too many characters in this movie that's likable, outside of maybe Father Adam. But you know, the movie as a whole for me, it's not one of my favorites. You know, like it's an entertaining flick, but at the same time, the plot is thin. You know, and it's not. I would say. It's not as engaging as I thought it would be. Like, I kind of just... The ending was underwhelming to me.
I loved the ending. I really...
For me, it was underwhelming, mainly due to how things went. Like, the girl turns into a vampire and she bites Baldwin. Yet he doesn't suffer the same effects that she had when she got bitten. You know, and look, we didn't even talk about how she got bitten. I was like, yo, he went down low. He said, fuck the traditional way. I'm going down low.
Yeah.
But he didn't suffer the same effects as she did. You know, he was able to recover, get his gun, and go help out. And I was like, that's a bit suspect because she was struggling through at least the whole first act of the movie after she got bit. Though, so.
Yes, but I really liked it in the end. That was so plausible for me that Crow would of course hunt his partner down, but he gave him like an edge to escape.
I liked it that, you know. Mm-hmm. But I was like, how the fuck this dude went from calling her a whore to falling in love with her? Is it because she bit him earlier in the movie that, you know, something must have got into him where he actually started falling in love with her? I was like, come on now. This ain't no love story. Now you feeling sympathetic for a prostitute. Get the fuck out of here.
Now, I actually like, despite the weird laughing between those two, I absolutely loved the tone, the pacing of this movie. It looked very grainy, and I really appreciated that. The fight scenes were very gruesome, and they felt very real. This was really a movie where where you always think that the protagonist could die at any moment. So it was very tense, and I also really liked that it totally felt outgunned at any point of time. And it was, like I said, the plot is thin. It was a little bit on a smaller scale. But for me, everything I liked, the atmosphere was there, the aesthetics were there, the soundtrack, fantastic. I mean, every soundtrack is fantastic in a Carpenter movie, obviously, because he knows how to do it.
Yeah.
This is the movie I would watch before going out and killing vampires. This over from Dusk Till Dawn.
And the funny thing is, this came out the same year as Blade.
Yeah. It was a very good year. I'm looking.
Like I said, I like vampires, but it's not my top 5 for me.
Like I said, it was a great year for vampires, and this year had 2 vampire movies. So
I'll take this over Twilight though, all day, every day. I was hoping that James Woods would come in the Twilight Zone and take them all out, man. Fuck that.
Maybe they should give him a role in the new Batman movie. Yeah. And 3 years later, after this movie, he did a movie that ended his career like for a lot of years because he was burned out after it. And the movie, I remember when it came out, it got a lot of flack. I was my second year in business school back then, when Ghosts of Mars came out in 2001.
Yeah, I remember when that first came out, seeing the trailers and stuff like that. I saw a lot of Ice Cube, and when I read later on that they said they cast the Ice Cube because they needed some star power, and I was like, I'm not sure if he's gonna work well in this movie, even at that time. Mm. And then Cube done some good movies before it, but for a Carpenter movie, you got to be on a whole new level. Like,
yes,
it's different from the movies that he did before.
Carpenter said that he wanted to make a fun action movie, and he basically pointed that he wanted to make this like Commando or Predator, like very tongue-in-cheek, but still very serious. And I think he failed at it because this movie is so terribly miscast. This movie has 2 characters that fit in the movie, and this is Jason Statham, which is one of the rare movies where he has hair still, and Pam Grier. Pam Grier and Statham are the 2 characters in this movie I can totally get behind with, and I think they should have Carpenter should have cast this movie with some old action stars, maybe even Kurt Russell as the protagonist if he wants to have star power. But Ice Cube doesn't work in this movie, and also the protagonist Natasha Henstridge, she doesn't work.
The thing is, Pam Grier was the only one that actually worked with Carpenter previously. Yeah. When on Escape from LA.
Also,
at least out of the main stars.
Yeah, Keith Davis was the narrator.
If you want to call it that. So he narrated. So his involvement just say, yeah, that's Keith David. But in terms of
opening credits.
But yeah,
but I think it's sad.
Go ahead.
I think it's sad because actually I really like the tone of this movie. It feels like an adaptation of heavy metal. Like when you watch Heavy Metal 2000, it totally feels like it could take place in the same world. It has this wonderful mixture of science fiction and sword and sorcery because the possessed humans, they really look like something out of like they totally look like Picts would look like Beyond the Black River, like in a Conan movie. So I absolutely love the aesthetics of this movie. I just wish it was differently cast.
They should have just casted Arnold Schwarzenegger and do a Total Recall Part 2. Mars gone crazy and shit.
Surely, yeah. Actually, that would have worked pretty well. And it's gory. It's so funny when Ice Cube said, because Ice Cube hate being on that movie because he thought he's doing a Carpenter movie and he's going to be critically acclaimed or something. And he said when he watched the movie, the effects look like it's a movie from the 70s. Yes, and this is why the movie's effects still look good because there are so much awesome practical gore effects in it, and they look so well done. Like if they would have gone overboard CGI, this would have been a mess.
The parts that was CGI was when they were throwing things, throwing those like razor sharp frisbees and getting heads to cap and stuff. Like, yeah, that was CGI.
But the movie truly has the strongest parts in the atmosphere, the practical effects. It's a little bit weird, like the romantic effect is very much pushed, especially since Jason Statham's character seems a little bit rapey.
Yeah, he was that's the reason why you couldn't really get behind him, because for as much as he wanted to help out and shit, do shit, he's like his mind is just thinking about getting with her, and I'm like, come on, bro, you in a serious situation, ain't no time to think about that.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the classic movies where you have an ensemble of people, like in Predator or in Aliens with the colonial marines, when they have the introduction of all these characters, you immediately get the characters and you form a bond with them as an audience. And Carpenter failed to do this with these characters in this movie. I couldn't care, except for Pam Grier, I couldn't care less when they died.
I didn't like Pam Grier's death. I was like, that's way too early for her to go out, man.
Yeah, too early, and she's still fucking hot in this movie.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man. They could have done Pam Grier better.
Yeah, but I really like her uniform was very sexy.
And I was like, fuck that girl when she shot the old man in the jail cell who was possessed by the cloud. She gonna shoot him, knowing damn well that the lady said that shit could get out of you. I'm like, it should have got her ass, man.
Yes, it's really, I enjoy this movie. I really like watching this movie because it is entertaining. I just wish it was better cast. And in 2001, there would have been better ways. It's like, just put Kevin Sorbo in it. If you can't afford like the rig of expensive stars, and even getting, should have even gotten Arnold in that time, because he was not so hot at this point of time.
Yeah. I think 2001 he did The Sixth Day, I think.
Yeah, this was his comeback movie, and 6 Days, awesome.
Yeah, I liked that movie.
Yeah, and I think having like star power and like really characters in there that have a charisma, you don't need to make a sausage fest. You could also have cast like Lucy Lawless as a kick-ass a female character in it.
Especially when you talk about him wanting to do like a parody of the 80s movies, of the action movies of the 80s. Like, shit, get Arnold. He was right there. If you're going to do that, get the king of the action in the 80s, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
And the wonderful thing about Arnold, and a lot of the action stars, they are actually, most of them very much aware and understand humor. Like Arnold parodied himself in Last Action Hero, which a lot of people didn't get. That this was a favorite of action movies.
I love that movie, man. I got that as a kid, and I was like, I don't know what he was thinking, man.
Exactly, me too. And I love Jurassic Park, and I think both movies should have had success in this year.
So Ghost of Mars was a good action flick that was miscast, and I felt it could have because you mentioned this earlier. It took elements from Assault on Precinct 13, with them being trapped in that building and stuff like that. And like I said, Carpenter likes to reuse some topics or some stuff from his previous movies to add to new ones. But it was miscast, and we didn't really get much out of it. Like, the ending makes it seem like, oh, there's gonna be more. But it's like, I hate endings like those because you're gonna assume that it's gonna be more, and we ain't gonna get more.
The ending very much felt like the ending of Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like. That we're gonna get more.
Yeah.
Ice Cube comes through the door, hands her a gun, and says, "Let's go kick some ass."
Yeah. even though this movie is very flawed, I wish, because after it, Carpenter said he was burned out and he didn't want to do movies for a while. So
I don't blame him though, because like I said earlier, majority of his movies are box office bombs. Outside of Halloween, I think The Fog made him some money. It wasn't a huge success, but it did make enough money. The fun Escape from New York and Escape from New York, like those three are his most successful box office movies. Everything else tend to be box office duds until later on.
I still think a lot of the movies made at least recouped some of the money in home media. Especially, I think for The Fog, it feels like they're bringing out a new Fog Blu-ray every 5 months.
They do that with a lot of movies. I can't stand.
I'm having here the 4K collector's edition, and since that came out, 2 new editions already came out. Just repacking that one with steelbook and other stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
And also, the Live Studio Canal always brings out new editions, so I really think that those movies still make money.
Yeah.
Of course, Hollywood. And this is the tragic with Hollywood. With their bookkeeping, these movies never make money, because if these movies make money, they have to pay Carpenter.
So obviously, I have not seen The Ward. You've seen it, and you said it wasn't that good.
It's the thing with The Ward. It's a solid movie, but it's not the kind of movie we waited 9 years for that Carpenter comes back. It's like it's technically well done. It doesn't look like a cheap movie, but it's just boring. It's like it's not a movie that needed to be done. It's also not a movie that ever since, like now 10 years later, has gained a cult following.
Yeah, because that movie kind of went unnoticed by me. I didn't even know he did it, to be honest.
Most people, I think the most what people think about is like that Amber Heard is in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish the last movie we would talk about today would not be The Ward, but like I would rather like have like a nice bow at the ending of his career with Ghost of Mars, which is a flop movie but still a very much entertaining movie. I mean, he still is now a producer. I didn't like the new Halloween. I gave it a chance, but was not for me.
Yeah, I don't really talk about the new one as much. People talk about how great it is, but I'd rather watch the original for me, personally.
Yeah, I mean, it's apparently a lot of people like it, and it's good that Halloween fans are getting finally a movie that they can really enjoy. So more power to them. But I really wish that Carpenter could do some of the projects he did with comics in movies. But I think also he's now at the age where I don't think he gives a crap about doing another movie. He's just enjoying his life. Rightfully so, because he has given us so many fantastic movies over the decades, and we're not entitled that he works for us making movies until he drops dead. So I'm very happy that he's in retirement and having another source to put his ideas to. I'm not reading the John Carpenter Presents comic book line because there's no place on my pull list for it. The last book I bought from Carpenter.
That's because you buying up all the Vampirella and Red Sonja variants. That's why.
Exactly. It's always when I think, oh, I have such a big stack of comics I can read. It's like, that's a variant. That's a variant. That's a variant.
That's why John Carpenter just ain't got no place on your pull, because you need those variants, bro.
I should stop buying comics with my dick.
Oh, shit. So,
Top five.
Top five. I'll go first. I'll go first. So my number five. I love this movie so much, and that's They Live. Number five for a reason. Great acting, great writing. You know, a great brawl and a great quote. You know, and the messages in this movie was very well done. I love this movie. That's my number five. My number four is actually In the Mouth of Madness. I love that movie. Like, it was a choice between Prince of Darkness and In the Mouth of Madness, but I just love In Mouth of Madness more because of the whole reality versus fiction, and then that fiction becoming reality, and just Sam Neill's performance was just amazing in that movie. The whole H.P. Lovecraft thing. We didn't even talk about the old lady torturing that old man at the bottom. That was fucking woo. That scene was crazy. So I love that movie. That's my number four. My number three is Escape from New York. I just love this movie. This is like, every time it's on TV, I watch it. Occasionally I'll put the Blu-ray in and watch it. I just love this movie so much. Snake Plissken is like my idol. Number two is The Fog, another classic horror movie. I can watch that movie a lot. You know, it's just the atmosphere of that movie is just fantastic. Just beautiful. The way the fog comes through the city and they just start. That was a little disappointment, is that when the fog was going through, we didn't actually see the fog go through the city and just ruin that whole little parade thing that they was having. I was like, when I was a kid, I was like, man, I want them to go and attack that whole area, but they didn't. But, you know, it's still a great movie. I love it. And of course, my number one, no question, The Thing. I love this movie.
It's a solid list. Of course, there is no wrong here because he did so many great movies, so it's tough to make a top five. For me, like the runner-up, like the honorable mention as 6 would be The Fog. Absolutely love this movie. It's a movie I'm rewatching every year, especially. It's actually one of the. I never planned it to be, but it's always the first movie I watch when Halloween season starts, because it really gets me into the mood. My top 5 is also The Live,
nice. Which
is in German Sie leben. Like you said, fantastic movie. It's still on the pulse of time. It has so many crazy themes and still is a serious movie. And this is what I love about it. This is one of the movies that should be on the Mount Rushmore of 80 movies.
Yeah. I would agree.
Yeah, just for the theme and for being iconic. Then number 4 is Vampires. This movie is so freaking cool. It's like he said, like same with me, like with the priest in the movie. Every time I'm watching it, I'm having a heart on like mahogany.
You get wood?
Look like mahogany. It's my. You know, I played Vampire the Masquerade for over 20 years. The pen and paper role playing game. This is the movie that gets me into a vampire mood. Then number 3, In the Mouth of Madness, which is in German Die Mächte des Wahnsinns. Big H.P. Lovecraft fan, and this is, in my opinion, one of the best movies that are based not on Lovecraft's writing, but they are based on Lovecraftian aesthetics and principles.
Great movie.
So it's great. Number 2, I only have as a digital buy on Amazon because it was too late to buy a Blu-ray this week. As Assault on Precinct 13.
Yeah, that's my number 6.
Yeah, that's my number 2.
I'm glad you got it in your top 5 though, because that movie is very, very good.
Yeah, and I picked it for the main reason. It may be not like his most intellectual or his most well polished movie, but it has the perfect length. There's no moment in this movie where I would feel like this goes on too long. It's just perfectly paced. The soundtrack goes totally into a blood, and you can also see that a lot of his future soundtracks are variations from that. Like all of his future movies takes elements from this one. If there's a movie that I would say is the most Carpenter-esque movie, is this movie. This movie is...
He said the funny thing about Carpenter, he said that was like his first true movie. Whereas Dark Star was like his just growing and independent movie. This one, he had a budget and he had, a time set to finish this movie. So it was definitely his first true movie.
This is the movie where most of his creative juices flow from, and I could rewatch it every day. It's just so cool. And my number 1, Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, that didn't make my list, but no, that movie to you is what Escape is for me in terms of character. I just love Escape more, but I love Big Trouble. That's my number 7 after Assault. And like I said, it's hard to make these lists, but at the same time, you can never go wrong with it because we all have favorites.
My number 7. It's really for me this is my number 1 movie because I think this is peak Carpenter, and it's a genre mix of action, adventure, Eastern, horror, and also a little bit not so much science fiction, but it's when you say like that other parts are subgenre of science fiction, it fits a little bit.
It's got mystical magic and all sword sorcery, all that stuff, man. It's just
I think this is like his this is the movie I would recommend anybody first if he wants to know what a Carpenter movie is about. Because it has all the elements, and what I really love about it, you can enjoy this movie on so many levels. If you watch it and just want to watch a fun action flick, it's a fun action flick. If you want to watch it as a homage to Eastern, it's a fantastic homage to Eastern. If you want to watch it as a movie that was ahead of its time in terms of making the Asian guy the protagonist while being a sidekick, and having Kurt Russell, who's like the American hero who would be in any other movie the kick-ass protagonist, and making him basically
he's like comic relief, and when you really look at it, comic
relief in this movie.
Yeah, he's the comic relief, and he's the star of the movie.
And this movie is enjoyable in so many ways. It's like there's no bad way to approach this movie. It will give you something. And this is why it's my number 1, because I watched this movie so many times, and I rediscovered this movie so many times when I was in a different mood, and it hit me completely differently than it did before.
Awesome, man.
Yeah. Fantastic streamer. Thank you, Sean, also because I think you said we should make a Carpenter special. It most certainly was the most demanding week in terms of movies I've ever had. Because tomorrow, Dan and Jennifer invited me on Dan's channel, Comic Shop News, to talk about the Reanimator trilogy. So I watched most of the Carpenter movies this week and also watched all 3 reanimated movies. But it was a very demanding week, but very much rewarding.
I love it though. It, like you said, it's demanding, but at the same time, it was rewarding. I just get to watch these movies, some I ain't watching in years, and have a re-evaluation of them. You know, like I said, even that movie Christine, it's a boring movie for you, but for me, it was a re-evaluation of it. You know, like I got something more out of it now than I did when I was younger watching it. You know, and
like I have no regrets watching any of these movies again, and it was so fun because I wrote with a friend on Instagram, and she asked me like how I feel. And like I've watched like all the week Carpenter movies because I'm having the show today, and I feel empty. And she's like, empty? How didn't you enjoy it? No, I enjoyed it very much. Every movie was so enjoyable to watch again. But when you sit there, make notes, and you watch the movie beyond just enjoying the movie, it's exhausting. And this was like a lot of. I've never watched so many movies within a week, analyzing the movie while watching it. So this was very demanding, but very rewarding.
Yeah, we got 2.5 hours I was discussing, man. We even got the G-Man and Jeff to pop in. So
yeah, special guest.
Yeah, man.
So for next week we have to decide on an easier show. I would say
Toxic Avenger.
No, that one we still have to wait because I can't get these movies right now. They're sold out. I have to wait until they're reissued, and they're not available on the German Amazon for streaming. So, but we will find something nice for next week, but not like over 20 movies or something, or 80 movies. Because I also have to write a review for a homepage next week.
Yeah, this was taxing, but it was fun, man. And I was like, man, let me go ahead and use my horror movie spotlight posters on Instagram and talk about some of these movies.
Yes,
for the videos.
And what's so wonderful, what I hear from also some viewers in the show, and like Gary B wrote me also on Instagram, and he said because of the show he watched so many movies and he liked it, and I'm very happy to hear this from people that watch our show and take it as a chance to also rediscover some of these movies.
Yeah, and like I said, it made me rewatch movies I ain't seen in years. Like, yeah. I wouldn't have thought about rewatching Christine, and then when I saw it on the list, Carpenter movie, I was like, "Shit, I remember this movie. I'm gonna watch it." And it gave me a reevaluation. You know, same what I saw on Precinct 13. You know, I remember watching that when I was younger, so it gave me a chance to rewatch it now and reevaluate it and see how much of a really good movie that was.
And the same thing for me. Like I liked Vampires when it came out, and now I love it so much more because I think this is also one of these movies, like when you're like older, you appreciate it more. I remember it when I watched it for the first time. I liked it because it was brutal, but I thought that James Woods didn't look as an action hero back then. And now I'm rewatching it. It was like, oh my god, he was so young back then, and he kicks ass.
Yeah, man, this was such an enjoyable week, man. Taxing but enjoyable.
Yeah, it was like I said, it was like very much. It drained me, but it was very rewarding, and
it was worth it because it was the build up to get to this show and to talk about it, and I felt like that was worth it. You know, I was like building this week up, posting nothing but Carpenter movies. Make sure you tune in Friday. We're gonna talk John Carpenter. And I got more enjoyment of sharing that on Instagram with doing these horror movie spotlights and talking about Carpenter movies. You know, I was like, man, I can't wait for Friday.
Next month also Lou Ferrigno has birthday. We should do a Lou Ferrigno special.
I'll maybe talk about the Incredible Hulk, but damn, I haven't seen that show in a long time too. All right, man, it's been real, man. I'm getting hungry now.
Okay, yeah,
Dinner
2.5
time.
hours. Fantastic
Hey,
show. Thank you so much for suggesting it. Can't wait for next Friday. Tomorrow, you will also have your Saturday show.
I'm not sure. I gotta talk with Steve and them because I know there's supposed to be a comic. Coliseum of Comics is having a massive warehouse sale, so they was talking about maybe coming up to Orlando and we go out hunting. So I gotta get with them to see if they still want to do it.
Warehouse sale, you gotta get there. Like, I would totally drop a live stream for getting to warehouse sale for comics.
Yeah, like you can fill up a short box for like I think tomorrow is $60. You can fill up a short box for $60, and comics is like 75 cents. So
I very much envy you for your possibilities to buy comics in the US. Yeah. Then I'm a guest tomorrow on Comic Shop News, and we'll talk about the Reanimator trilogy, which will be very much fun because big fan, like I said, really big fan of Lovecraft, big fan of the adaptations. All 3 movies are fantastic, and I
gotta make sure I catch that one up and they go live.
And the topic for next week, it's Comic Shop News. Just look on my Instagram, and I will have it in my story.
You could be asking about where's this place that I'm going tomorrow,
which is also logical. Great. So we're gonna announce which movie we're gonna do something next week. Yeah, $60 Dropboxes. And thanks for everybody being in the chat. Was so entertaining. So many interesting opinions in the chat, and also some people from the chat hopped on the show, which was also very entertaining. Thank you for watching, and I hope we will see you next Friday. And enjoy the weekend and have a savage day.
Enjoy, everybody.